All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, we'd like to give all praise and glory to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, Kakwadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth. And salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. And the elect begins with the 144,000. YAHAWAH, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jehovah. BAHASHAM is in the name. YAHAWASHI, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. The Rakak, or Doctrine, the Holy Spirit. I'm the brother I will lump you with the gym at Chicago camp out here in Chicago. Come back at you, brothers and sisters, at a household of faith of the Hopeful Right Select with another lesson. And Lord willing, I hope this lesson be edifying through the spirit and power of YAHAWASHI. Once again, I hope this lesson is edifying. Just really going into prophecy, man, how ultimately, this guy Donald Trump is ultimately, as going back to this article, which I'm going to read, basically, putting police full swing on the streets, man. Basically a form of martial law, man. This is Bible prophecy, going back to 2nd Esdras, the 15th chapter, man. And all this is ultimately gearing up towards what? Jacob's trouble, which ultimately what? The Lord is going to use Esau Edom as that whooping stick against the wicked of our people, man. But the elect will be delivered from those said perils. But I just want to go, through this article a little bit. Ultimately, you have a form of martial law. Not really a form, but hey, it is martial law, over there in Washington, D.C. And there's being reports that it's in Baltimore now. I'm gonna fact check that, but let's just jump straight into the article. This is from the WBEZ Chicago. It says Trump's D.C. crisis enters second week with more soldiers and no exit strategy. Because there's a few clips going around, the brothers had shared it, the brothers put it on their YouTube pages. How ultimately what these different police officers is basically harassing Jake. Jake is sitting on his porch. You got these different police officers, knocking on Jake's doors, things of that nature. And this is the time that we're coming into, man. Because ultimately what? They're going to start pulling Jake outside their house, sending them to concentration camps, man. Because this is only, as the scripture said, this is only the beginning of sorrows, man. These are the beginning of sorrows. But I'm going to just jump straight into this article. It says from Washington, it says, as the U.S. Capitol braces for a second week with soldiers and mass federal agents conducting revolting patrols on the city streets, President Trump says he knows some Americans fear he crossed a dangerous line, right? Because we know, this guy Donald Trump, he is that cruel Lord, going back to the Isaiah there 19th chapter, man, based on what he's doing, man. These draconian laws, man. And what's that, Revelation, the 13th chapter, man? Talking about that two-party system, had two horns as a lamb, but spake as a dragon, man. Those draconian laws. This guy Donald Trump is, putting these different laws into effect, ultimately to oppress Jake, man. And it says already they're saying he's a dictator. Trump said Wednesday, speaking at the Kennedy Center in Washington, the place is going to hell and we got to stop it. It says, so instead of saying he's a dictator, they should say we're going to join him and make Washington safe. And everything he's been saying in these different press conferences, man, he's alluding to Jake, basically, causing crime in these inner cities and things of that nature, he's basically saying, they're mugging the people that's coming into, Washington, D.C. and things of that nature, man. Just basically trying to put Jake in a bad light, going back to Revelations, 12, the accuser of our brethren, man. It says it's impossible to untangle the impulses that led Trump to abruptly militarize law enforcement in D.C., putting hundreds of National Guard troops and federal agents on the streets. It says while attempting a chaotic takeover of the city's metropolitan police department. And right, and Donald Trump said not only in D.C., but he wants, this same, said act in what? Chicago, Vegas, L.A., basically these different cities, that's majority Jake, man. Let's grab this. Let's, just jump straight into it. This is the book of 2nd Esdras 16 and verse 18. It says, the beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death. It says, the beginning of wars. It says, and the power shall stand in fear. The beginning of evils, what shall I do when these evils shall come? Right, so ultimately, these are the beginning of sorrows, man. Because the Lord is about to visit this place, man. The Lord is about to amp Esau Edom up, man. The Lord is going to use Esau Edom as that whooping stick, man, to ultimately come against Jake, man. You know, Revelation 6 and 4, man. The Lord is going to ultimately, give Esau Edom, ultimately what, that, the goal to come after you tribes, man. And ultimately going to have what, famines, great death. And it's always going to be caused by Esau Edom's hands, man. The Lord is going to use Esau Edom to ultimately to usher these different things in, man. It says the beginning of wars and the power shall stand in fear. It says the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? Right. And this is the prophet Ezra, talking to the angel, I believe is Uriel. Ultimately, Ezra was given the vision of what's to come in the future. And we're ultimately playing out, we're living in that future, that ultimately Ezra, seen it within the vision, man. Great death, great mournings. It says, verse 19 says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment, right? So these different things are ultimately sent, as a warning for our people to get right, man. But we know 2/3 of our people is not going to get right. So ultimately what? The Lord is going to use Esau Edom. Hey, what's that? Psalms the 17th chapter. Deliver us from the wicked, which is thy sword, man. The Lord is going to use Esau Edom to what? To come down on you tribes, man. It says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment, right? The Lord is sending these different plagues. You can read the 4 sword judgments, man. What's that? Jeremiah the 15th chapter, verse 2. It says, but for all these things they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges. It says, behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and evil. It says, and even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion, right? These things are coming upon the earth as being sent from YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, man. These different, scourges, these different things that's ultimately, especially hitting the soils of America, man. Famines, pestilence, things of that nature. It says, for many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. And the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall no man be Salaki. It says that there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted, and the city shall be cast down. It says there shall be no man left to till the earth to sow it. Right, talking about the coming destruction that's to come, man. Famines, great destruction, great death, man. And this is what the Lord is, is going to use Esau Edom to ultimately to bring in, man. It says, I'm gonna actually jump down a little bit. Let's see. Bear with me for a second. Yep. 2 Ezra 16 and verse 70. It says, for there shall be in every place in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. Right, talking about the elect, man, because who ultimately fears the Lord, man? Hey, the hopeful race select, man. It says they shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. Right, talking about Esau Edom, man, when he comes down, as Revelation 12 and 12, says, which I'm gonna ultimately get in a second. The enemy coming down with great wrath, knowing that he had but a short time, man. And Esau Edom is going to be like a madman sparing none. Just look what he's doing to Jake in Washington, D.C., man. And that's nothing compared to what's to come, man. Just wait till they actually get the get-go to start gunning you niggas down, man. Verse 71 says, they shall be like madmen sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. It says, for they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. Right, and that's exactly what's going to happen, man. When martial law is fully declared, man, they're going to throw you niggas outside your houses and send you to concentration camps, man. Take whatever they see that is pleasing. Hey, your wives, your goods, your sons. And ultimately what? Now either cash you out your house, send you to a concentration camp, or ultimately put you to death, man. It says, verse 73, it says, then shall they be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as the gold and the fire, right? And it's going to be revealed who the Lord's chosen are, which is what? The elect of the nation of Israel, man. Who the Lord is going to have mercy on, man. That's who the Lord is going to protect in the times that's to come. Hey, that's Psalms 91st chapter, man. When martial law is fully declared on your streets, man, hey, when 2/3 is being gunned down, the elect is going to be protected of the nation of Israel, man. Let's get that Revelation 12 and 12. And this is all a part of Jacob's trouble, man. This is the book of Revelation 12 and 12. It says, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. It says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time. And exactly right, man. Esau Edom is going to come down heavy, with his technology, his weaponry against you tribes, man. Because what? He's trying to fulfill his New World Order agenda. He knows he has but a short time to actually do it, man. So what? He is going to get, you niggas, you undesirables out the way. And the Lord is going to put the spirit on Esau Edom to do so, man. Because ultimately what? Because of your wickedness, because you refuse to turn back to YAHAWASHI, hey, the Lord is going to give Esau Edom full reign to do what he likes with you niggas, man. Gun you down, put you into these different concentration camps, starve you out, things of that nature, man. As I read in that 2nd Esdras the 16th chapter, hey, Esau Edom is going to be like a madman sparing none, man. But ultimately what? The elect is going to be protected. It's actually something else I wanted to get from the 2nd Esdras 15. Second Esdras 15 and verse 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Right, woe means destruction. It says, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Right, you're going to have civil wars, class wars, race wars, right here on the shores of America, man. You're going to have these everyday citizens come up against the government, man. Which is going to mention this verse 16. It says, for there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Right? What's your modern day king, man? Your presidents, your mayors, these different people is not going to regard their kings nor princes, man. Which is what? Their presidents and their mayors, man. Because just look at the state of the economy, man. Hey, because right here in America, man, hey, they're willingly taking away the people's rights, man. You got martial law over there in DC right now. Hey, basically, going after Jake, basically what? Taking away you people's rights, especially Jake. That's why you're gonna have these different, a civil war that break out in the shores of America, man. You're gonna have these Proud Boys. You're gonna have these, Americans that's down with the Constitution. That's ultimately gonna stand up against this government, man. It says, verse 17, here's the point I want to get. Verse 17 says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. Right, talking about martial law, man. Just look what happened during the C-19, man. When ultimately martial law, was declared. You had different checkpoints. You had to, be an essential worker to actually, hey, go to work and, hey, go back to the crib, man. And this is the times that we're coming into, man. Because ultimately what happened in 2020, man, was a test run. And what's happening in Washington, D.C., hey, and it's happening in Baltimore. I got to fact check that right now. It's videos of, military personnel being spotted here in Chicago, man. But ultimately, what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. will be worldwide, man. In every single state, man, there's going to be a form of martial law, man. You can't go, to this city, can't go to that city, because everything is going to be locked down, man. It says, verse 18, it says, because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, and the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. And that's what's coming, man. Mass death, great destruction, man. And the Lord is going to use, put the spirit on Esau Edom to do it, man. And all this is gearing up towards Jacob's trouble, man, which our elders and apostles always push. Let's get this Jeremiah 30 and 7. This the book of Jeremiah 30 and 7 says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. Is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Actually, let's actually go up. This is the book of Jeremiah 30 and verse 5. Verse 4. It says, these are the words that the Lord Yahawah spake concerning Israel and concerning Judah. For thus saith the Lord Yahawah, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace, because peace is not coming to the shores of America, man. The only thing that's coming is death and destruction. Ask ye now and see whether a man doth travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness. Because what? It even talks about in the scriptures that even men shall be afraid, man. The amount of tribulation, the amount of distress that's to come to the shores of America. It says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. Is isn't even a time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Who is the he that's going to be saved out of it, man? The elect, man. Because in Daniel 12:1, it talks about it's going to be a time like never before, man. You know, you're going to have martial law. Because what's happening over there, you know, to Jake in Washington, D.C., you know, being harassed by the police, you know, things of that nature, you know, hey, what is you doing? You know, basically asking, you know, Jake questions, you know, while he's on his porch, you know, hey, unlawfully, you know, putting Jake in handcuffs. Hey, that's nothing compared to what's to come, man. You know, just wait till they start gunning you niggas down by the thousands, man. And that's the, you know, environment that we're ultimately approaching, man. You know? So with that being said, I hope this lesson was edifying. I want to end up by giving all praise and glory to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of great millstone that taught us this truth. And salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. Lord, I hope this lesson was edifying. Until next time, Kwam Yasharallah, Shalom, and a Baba Ball. Until next time, Lord willing.